Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on creating a budget that works that will focus on why budgeting is important and some easy steps towards building a budget that will be successful that you can use for yourself, you can use to educate members, and hopefully will provide some help along the way. Budgeting really looks very similar across the board in that it needs to have a clean structure with four parts. Number one, you have to understand what your income is. Number two, you have to save at the beginning as opposed to what's left over, creating a plan for how you're going to spend your money, and then reducing your debt over the long run. So, not getting too aggressive in reducing debt where you're taking on new debt while you're paying off old debt, but being strategic in the way that you're reducing your debt load. So, pay yourself first is a term that many of us have heard before, but it's this idea that when you are paid your paycheck, it comes in, the first thing you actually want to do is set aside the money for a rainy day, or set aside that money for retirement, or set aside that money for a big purchase or emergency fund. But you need to have a plan for how you are saving. Great place to start is with an emergency savings cushion. That'll help you sleep better at night to know that there's money set aside. The textbook answer is to have 3 to 6 months of income saved away where you can get it if you need it. Creating some goals for how you're going to save and what you're saving for. And it's never too early to start thinking about retirement. As a matter of fact, the sooner you start, if you talk to Neil or you talk to Anthony or anyone on our team, the sooner that you start saving for retirement, the better your chance of being successful in doing so. You have to track your spending. Coming up with numbers out of the thin air, pulling these numbers together, never works. You have to find a way to track what you're currently spending so that you can in turn create a plan for what you want to spend in the future. Categorize your monthly spending results into some nice categories, and then prioritizing after you've categorized them, prioritizing what is most important to you. You'll find attached to this a case study that you can go through and you can look at someone's budget, a real life budget that someone put together, and help them to make adjustments to get that to where it needs to be and prioritize accordingly. Each of us has our own money personality. Some of us are impulsive buyers, sale shoppers. Some of us are against shopping at all costs. Others are distraction buyers that we're constantly trying to distract ourselves by buying things. And then some of us want to spend according to esteem. We want people to think that we're doing well, so we spend money because of it. Each and every one of us has a different money personality. It's a whole talk in and of itself, but it's important to understand what your triggers are to buy things, where you lean in terms of saving and spending, and then creating a budget that custom fits you. So if you're someone who has cash and spends it all right away, then maybe having cash on you is not the best way to do it. Maybe having a cash diet isn't the smartest way to do it. Or if you're someone that just swipes their card all the time and cash is more meaningful, maybe you need to use an envelope system. And that could be a way that you're tracking your spending on that envelope and making sure that you're not overdrafting when you run out of money. How much debt is too much debt? That's a question I get often when we talk about budgeting. And typically, when we're looking at budgets, and you see this all the time with members that you're talking to, you really want your consumer debt. So anything that's not a student loan or a mortgage, ideally in healthy budgets, it's usually under 10%. Now, I know this is an underwriting, and Emily and Jake and the whole team do an incredible job in underwriting of being able to look at these things. So this isn't a lending practice, but this is just for ways to keep our own budget healthy. We really want to be under 20% of our overall take-home pay going towards consumer debt. So if you make $2,000 a month here at Firefly, you really don't want your car loan to be more than $400 a month. You want to try to keep that as low as you can to create space for other pieces in your budget, especially those to save. Paying the minimum on credit cards is a huge issue around this debt reduction. At a 3% minimum, which is above right now the national standard, and what we are asking at 18% interest rate means it take about 47 months to pay off a $500 balance. So this is looking at $500. That's a long time, 4 years to pay off that $500 debt. If you're in deep and you have tons of credit card debt, or you're working with a member who's in deep and has tens of thousands of dollars of credit card debt, it might be a good idea to think about a debt management plan. Places like LSS Financial Counseling, that has a special relationship with Firefly, would love to sit down with whoever is in need of help and get them enrolled in this plan that would immediately reduce their interest rate, sometimes down to zero on some credit cards, and get them on a realistic and productive payment plan going forward. Student loans are tricky. So student loans are really a tricky part of budgets. We're seeing more and more that student loans are eating up tons and tons of income of young adults. But the key is to not default on your loans. There's lots of options around student lending. You shouldn't ever default on your loans because you can call and verbally forbear those loans up to 24 months just by saying you can't make that payment. You can also forbear it if you're in school, and there are all kinds of forgiveness options depending on the career field that you're in, depending on what kind of a loan you have and how long you've been paying it. It's worth exploring. Again, LSS Financial Counseling has student loan counseling. You could sit down with a student loan counselor, or you could talk with, for instance, if you have your loans through Fed Loans, you could request more information from them. Medical and dental bills are another big budget buster. Payment plans are great for these medical and dental bills. Medical bills, if you get on a payment plan, you should be able to avoid having to pay interest on it. And also, if, for instance, someone was to take you to court and you went to court because you were on a payment plan for a medical bill and they wanted it right then, the judge would be frustrated and say, all I was going to do was create a payment plan. So payment plans are a surefire way to pay things off realistically, not keep the cycle of debt going. But don't be pressured by large, overwhelming payments by collectors, not just medical and dental bills, but all collectors. Don't be pushed into making a payment you can't afford just to get them off your back. Be strategic in how you're paying those things. Be realistic and stick to your debt reduction plan. Some options to consider when we're talking about issues pertaining to budgeting. If your budget's been totally upside down, you've been underwater, you're just sinking, I know that bankruptcy can sound like a great option, but the reality is bankruptcy is really prohibiting, not just in finding employment, not just in your car insurance rate going way up every month in premiums because your score is hurt, but also you're oftentimes having to pay it back depending on if it's 7 or 13. Also, you're going to be stuck with that for 10 years now in your credit report. There's so many things to think about before you make a knee-jerk reaction and file for bankruptcy. I would sit down with a financial counselor to get some advice on that. That settlement is like a miniature bankruptcy where you're settling a debt that's maybe $10,000 and you're only paying $2,000 for it. This can be a good option to get out of debt and pay much less, but it's important to know that oftentimes you'll have to pay taxes on those things. So if you're in a 25% tax bracket and you're forgiven $8,000 when tax season comes around, you're going to owe $2,000 of that. It also can really wipe out your credit score and can look terrible on your credit file. Debt consolidation mills are less popular than they were 5 or 7 years ago, but we're still seeing lots of places that offer consolidation of all your loans together into one easy monthly payment. But then they're charging a massive amount of interest for that. You want to be careful about these too good to be true consolidation mills, I call them. Consolidation loans where you're tying things together that really shouldn't be, like taking out home equity loans to pay for vacations, etc. You want to be really smart with how you're using your loans to consolidate your debt. Anyone who says they're a credit repair agency is shady. You don't want to deal with any credit repair agencies. No matter what kind of issues you're having financially, it's smart to stay away. Private student loans are a budget buster. The issue with private student loans is they're adjustable rate. Unlike government-backed loans, these private student loans can go up to 15%, 18% even, and you end up paying tens of thousands of dollars every year on interest on these private loans. Avoid private student loans. And then last, even if you're in bad straits, if you're in a bad situation financially and your budget just isn't working, draining your retirement account is usually a bad option. Retirement accounts grow over time. They're a great fallback. You could take a loan out on it if you needed to. Also, often, even in court for bankruptcy filings, even in courts for divorce, many times judges will allow you to keep your retirement account because they see how important it is for you to have money saved away for when you retire. Here are some resources for you. If you're interested in getting more information about student loans, studentloanborrowerassistance.org is a great site with lots of answers to questions. Any kind of common question you might have, that'd be a great place to look. The Department of Education at ed.gov has all kinds of Q&A sections and more resources for you there. If you're looking for debt counseling, if you want to sit down with a professional debt counselor, cccs.org is a great place to go. And then credit reports and scores can be found at annualcreditreport.com and myfico.com. I hope this helped. Thanks and good luck as you get your budget together.